Hello, my name's Andrew Brooks. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video is all about one of my favourite Wings albums, Water Wings. Hello and thank you for joining me once again on my YouTube channel. Big hello to all the new subscribers. Thank you very much for watching and thank you very much for subscribing. All you need to do is just click this button down here if you're not already a subscriber, and you'll instantly hear of any new videos that come out. Thank you very much. Just a little reminder that if you do see any links appearing up here, you can click on them, it will save them, and you can watch whatever it is that I'm referring to later on, after you've watched the rest of my video, of course. So let's just look at what was going on in 1977. Well, in January, Jimmy Carter became the 39th US president. In February, we had the first test flight of the Space Shuttle Enterprise. March, the rings of Uranus were discovered. Someone looking through a telescope. What else we got? April, Red Rum wins the Grand National in the UK for the third time, so it's a record-breaking event. May, it was my birthday, I was 11. June, Queen Elizabeth II celebrates her silver jubilee. And we all had street parties in the UK. Well, most of us did anyway. July, Virginia Wade wins the women's Wimbledon tennis title. I think probably for quite a long time. We hadn't had a winner for ages over here in the UK. So there we are. In August, very peculiar and obscure one, but Quebec approves French as being its first language. September, you'll like this. Where would we be now without them? Fibre optics were installed for the very first time. Can you believe that? Back in 1977, and now they're everywhere. October, the Sex Pistols, they released their album Nevermind the Bollocks, and punk hit the scene. November, British Airways flew its first sort of scheduled regular Concorde service between London and New York. And in December, Saturday Night Fever movie was released to the world, and we all saw John Travolta doing his dancing. There is, however, a distinct lack of some Wings stuff. I mean, obviously there was some Wings stuff going on, and that's what we're going to look at now. New studio material from Paul and Wings. It had been 2 years, over 2 years, since we'd had a studio album, Wings at the Speed of Sound, and obviously Paul had been touring in '76, so yeah, he'd been a bit busy doing that. There was a tour planned for '77, then Linda fell pregnant with James, so that was shelved. So what was going on in the Wings camp? Well, in January, just after Jimmy Carter got elected, and before the Space Shuttle test flight in February, 5 members of Wings, back then it was Paul, Linda, Denny, Joe English and Jimmy McCulloch, they went to Abbey Road, the EMI studios in Abbey Road, as they were then. They're now called Abbey Road Studios, but back then they were just called EMI Studios, to record some new material. And they stayed in there until the rings of Uranus were discovered in March. They worked on 5 songs. The first one being this, and here's the sheet music for it, Girls' School. So that was like the first song that they worked on for this new project. What else did they do? They worked on a song called Name and Address, a song called London Town, and here's the sheet music for it. Children, Children, and B-side to Seaside, which, if you don't know, is a Linda McCartney and Wings track. So out of all of these songs that they recorded, the first one to be released actually was the Linda track, B-side to Seaside. It was actually the B-side to the original Seaside Woman release. It got released in the States first, And this was the cover back then, as you can see. It's yeah, just sort of pictures from the video from what I can remember, and B-side to C-side is on there. I've got written here, it was the B-side to a track that the band had recorded, although not in this incarnation, it was, you know, previous. They recorded it back in March in '72, and it seems the band had a little break in April after doing that little bit of recording at EMI Studios, presumably to watch Red Rum, maybe put a bet on Red Rum winning the Grand National for its record-breaking third time at Aintree in Liverpool, Paul's hometown, of course. Okay, we're going to jump on now to the 1st of May. It was the month I celebrated my 11th birthday, and the band, plus an entourage of engineers, sound engineers, and people from MPL such as Alan Crowder, etc. They all flew out to the US Virgin Islands and joined 3 motor yachts out there. These yachts were moored at Watermelon Cay in St John's, just outside St John's, which is part of the US Virgin Islands, and they began working on new material, and Paul tentatively called it Water Wings. And so much so, he obviously was quite enamoured with the title, because the club sandwich that records all the stuff that's going on out there is actually called Water Wings. There we are. And as you can see, it's it's all about the recording out in the US Virgin Islands on these boats. I'll show you some more pictures from that in a little while. The 4 weeks they spent out there obviously provided a brilliant backdrop for vacationing and, of course, work. The 3 boats out there were El Toro, which was the sort of motor yacht that Paul and Linda and the kids, because they'd taken the kids with them, that's where they stayed and set up their camp. The band were on another boat called Samala, and the 3rd boat, the motor yacht Fair Carol, was converted into a recording studio, much to the captain's annoyance by all accounts. But it provided them a nice sort of backdrop for them to do their recording. So just a little bit about the studio. The studio had been set up by Record Plant in LA, and that was in the main lounge, and and also they obviously recorded and played, just practiced out on the deck as well. I mean, what a fantastic place to practice your stuff and be out in the sunshine. Another deck on the Fair Carol was used as the control room for the recording, so that's obviously where the tape decks were and all of that. And as I said, it just seemed like everyone had a lot of fun going in between the boats, swimming in between the boats, and also recording their time out there. They seem to, from what I read, they sort of had a very leisurely morning, bit of swimming, did a little bit of recording, and then sort of maybe had a little party in the evening. So this is Club Sandwich. This is number 3 from June, July 1977. There you go. And as you can see, they've got some great, fantastic pictures of Wings on the boats, recording on the Fair Carol there. There we go. I'll open it up. Just give you a quick flash. There's a great picture of the Fair Carol there. I'm sure you've probably already seen these before, but there's an awful lot of photos from that session. So the tracks that were recorded on the Fair Carol, there's a list here. So we've got With a Little Luck, Backwards Traveller, Cufflink, Cafe on the Left Bank, I'm Carrying, I've Had Enough. Got some sheet music for that one there. There we are. That's the sheet music for I've Had Enough. Great picture. I think that's probably a better picture than the 7-inch single. But there we are. It might have even been used as a 7-inch single sleeve in other countries. So yeah, I've Had Enough. Famous Groupies, Don't Let It Bring You Down, and that epic Morse Moose and Grey Goose. Other tracks that were recorded but not released, we had things like Boyle Crisis. So if ever you've picked up a copy of Cold Cuts, you'll hear one of the versions of Boyle Crisis on there. After You've Gone, and then there's an instrumental called El Toro Passing, and also a Denny Lane track called Find a Way, which I think he still performs to this day in his gigs. Never been released by Wings, as far as I know. I'm guessing there must be copies out there of it. Unfortunately, recording on these boats had its ups and downs, a bit like the waves, really. US Customs, as I said, they did like to party, so US Customs did visit Paul and the gang on a number of occasions. So we're sure probably some wacky backy and other stuff were being used. No one was arrested. That came later, a couple of years later. There were no arrests. Just some strongly worded letters, which you can see on the poster that comes with the album, which we'll come on to later. Strongly worded letters addressed to Alan Crowder, as he was sort of like the MPL representative, and later actually became Paul's manager. So he was the one that received the letter saying, just don't do any drugs. There was plenty of accidents on these boats. Apparently, Paul cut his knee open and got severe bruising on his leg. Denny was severely sunburnt. Well, what do you expect coming from Birmingham, where it rains for 90% of the time, and there he is out in the sunshine. Jimmy also gashed his knee and went temporarily deaf in one ear. Must have been playing that music really loud. Even their entourage were not safe. Alan Crowder, he breaks a heel, and you know how thick a heel bone is. He breaks a heel falling down the stairs. Jeff Emmerich, poor old Jeff Emmerich, he got his foot electrocuted a few times. Presumably the wiring wasn't all that good in the studio. But they spent a whole month, 4 weeks, out in the sun, and when it was over, they returned to the UK just in time for the Queen's Silver Jubilee in June. Now, in July, just as Virginia Wade won the Wimbledon, the band stayed away from the studios, but they did return in August, just as Quebec was adopting the French as its first official language. However, they would spend their time in Paul's Spirit of Ranacan studios up in Scotland. So as well as working on London Town and Girls' School, they also recorded a new song, Mull of Kintyre, and that was on the 9th of August. Now, Linda was heavily pregnant at this time, and it was felt they probably had to return to London Town, where Silver Rain was falling down, because she was obviously getting ready for James's delivery. Now, in the month of September, when fibre optic cables were first introduced, James was born September the 12th. The only other thing of note in September, and it's quite sad really, the only other thing of note was Wings went from a 5-piece to a 4-piece. Joe English left, felt a bit homesick, down to a 3-piece when Jimmy McCulloch left to join the new Small Faces. That then just left the core of Denny, Linda and Paul. Now, in October, when the Sex Pistols released their iconic Nevermind the Bollocks album, Paul was putting the finishing touches to not a punk track, Mull of Kintyre. It was at EMI Studios in Abbey Road, and was actually visited by Melvyn Bragg and the film crew for Melvyn Bragg's TV show, The South Bank Show. And in it, link, in it you can see Paul rehearsing Mull of Kintyre. He does a really nice interview, talks about some early days and things like that. But it's well worth a watch. Click on the link and give it a watch. Now, we're up to November now, rattling through the year, and we haven't really got very much from Wings other than a few tracks down. November, just as BA launches its first scheduled Concorde flights from London to New York, Mull of Kintyre is released. And oh my god, it's a huge hit. Personally, it's not my favourite of songs, but it's a massive hit. In fact, it's still the UK's fastest and biggest selling non-charity single. Obviously, Band-Aid and things like that have gone past it. But even after all this time it's passed, it's still that big. As I said, it was big in the UK. In the US, they probably didn't even know what the Mull of Kintyre or what a Mull of Kintyre actually is. And this is actually covered by a really interesting video. I'll put the link up here by Parlogram Auctions. Andrew on it. He goes into great depth about Mull of Kintyre. So I recommend that being a watch. So yeah, it didn't go down well in the US. However, the B-side was, do you remember Girls' School? Right at the back at the beginning of the year, the first track, or one of the first tracks they recorded. Well, they finished it off and they put it as the B-side, and the American public and radio stations, more importantly, loved it. It was a rocker, far more it was far more in tune with the Americans being a rocker. So in England we had, as you can see here, Mull of Kintyre, but flip it over and you have the double A side of Girls' School. Terrific. Okay, moving on to December 1977, and while the band, and I'm sure everyone else, was enjoying John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever and probably also enjoying Christmas as well, the band had a little rest. Have December off. However, back in the studio for January 1978, this is when they finally finished the album. It was no longer called Water Wings. It was now had its new title taken from one of the tracks of London Town, which is a bit ironic when you think of London Town, Silver Rain falling down, you know, a bit grey maybe. And most of these tracks, including London Town, were actually recorded at the Sunshine in the Virgin Islands. So, where do we go from here? It was released in the US on March the 20th and in the UK 3 days later on March the 23rd. To launch the album, Paul, Linda and Denny took to the River Thames along with a huge press pack to launch the album. So they sailed from Charing Cross Pier, which is sort of down towards the Houses of Parliament, and then they did a return trip to Tower Bridge and then back, with everyone enjoying fish and chips, as you can see in the video. So here we go. How did the album fare? Well, let's have a look at the album first of all. There we are. So it's London Town. It's got colourful writing across the top, sort of, you know, a bit of a dismal looking London there. I need to flip it over and you've got Paul and Linda in their summer wear when they were down in the Virgin Islands, and a nice summary picture of Tower Bridge there. Taking out the record itself, so we have a nice sort of inner sleeve with all the lyrics, and it kindly tells you, if you have a look on here, some of them have got like little boats next to the song titles, and that indicates the ones that were actually recorded out in the Virgin Islands. Also comes with a lovely poster, as I mentioned earlier. So it's a double-sided poster actually. So first of all we've got a huge picture of Paul, Linda and Denny, and then on the reverse we have sort of a White Album sort of collage with a porthole in the middle of the Fair Carol. You can just see it there, and as I said, in here there's like the photos from their recording sessions, letters telling them don't do drugs, they're bad, and the like. So that's the album. The critics hated it, absolutely hated it, got ripped to bits, and I think there's probably a small minority of Wings fans that don't like it. I personally, it's up there for me. It's one of the best ones, but we'll come on to that in a while. It reached number 4 in the UK, the album, and number 2 in the US. And the first single from it, With a Little Luck, this is a German sleeve. There we are. Yeah, With a Little Luck, that reached number 1 in the US. The follow-up single, as I said, that's the picture sleeve for I've Had Enough. And quite boring back sleeve. And personally, I think that is a far stronger sleeve and you know, picture, and should have been the single cover there. That was the second single from the album, and then the final single. This is again a German sleeve for London Town. The single. There we have it. It's a bit battered, I know. It's the only copy I could find. These two, they reached sort of, you know, they were minor hits. They reached the lower end of the top 40 in the 30s. Interestingly though, Michael Jackson, later to work with Paul, recorded Girlfriend. So yeah, you could sort of, when you listen to Paul doing the falsettos, you can kind of imagine Jacko doing it. And he did on his Off the Wall album. So, just moving on, there are some fantastic bootlegs. I did mean to get them out, but I'm not going to rummage around for them now. But there's some fantastic bootlegs from the sessions, alternate versions of the songs, and I encourage you all to check them out. You can probably find them on YouTube, or if you haven't got them on DVD, on CD or vinyl already, and you'll be able to enjoy the seemingly never-ending version of Morse Moose and Grey Goose, which does go on a little bit, but you can see what they edited it down. But it is great. The whole bootlegs, the whole recording stuff is fantastic. So that about wraps it up really for London Town. As I said, I personally love this album. It's up there with Back to the Egg for me. And I'm even going to go as far to say as I actually prefer it to Band on the Run. Band on the Run is a bit overexposed. Sorry for all you Band on the Run fans, but I actually prefer London Town. No hate messages, please. And I'm really looking forward to whenever, if ever, it gets around to having an archive release. And I've actually covered what could be on an archive release in another video. So click the link up here if you haven't already checked it out. Before I go, I would just like to say a big thank you to a couple of my pals, Dale Pants and Andy Wheel. They provided me with some valuable information and some photos that I desperately needed and I couldn't find at the time, so they were great in supplying them. Please do get in touch. There's the socials, which I'll put on at the end, so you can contact me through them. I do read all the remarks, and I do reply to ones that I feel needed. So you know, click on the comments below, and I'll read them all. So probably by now there's some videos appearing up here, which I'm recommending that you watch. And I'll see you next time.